It's interesting, David said that this breakfast is sold out, but 15, 18 years ago, when we were looking at Nine Elms, half of you did not know where Nine Elms was, and I think the other half are regretting that they are not currently represented in Nine Elms, because this is an opportunity on the riverside waiting to happen, and nobody in the property world seemed to know about it or had any interest in it. Before what is going to happen in Nine Elms, just reflect on what the area is and has been. Originally it was marshland, it became farmland, it became sort of gasworks and railway land, and lately it became kind of white van warehouse territory. And for many years it remained there, and it was unlikely to move. It was kind of ambition that Wandsworth Council had, and by a very chance remark from myself and the former leader of Wandsworth saying, well, why is this not going to change? Because the rest of Wandsworth Riverside has changed, why is this not going to change? And from that started the process of re-looking at what Nine Elms could do, and we commissioned a study locally to see whether the industrial land could be rezoned, and that's where it started.
From the Lambeth side of things, what were the sort of catalysts for creating the strategy board, and how did you overcome that sort of challenge? As Ravi says, you know, you've got kind of Labour and Conservative, and you know, Wandsworth and Lambeth. Sort of how did cats lie with dogs in that sense?
I can't quite put it like that, but yes, certainly we're not the most obvious partnership. We're not the most obvious partners. However, I think the prize was so huge that it would have been very churlish of us not to have taken the opportunity to work together. I remember going to a very early meeting with Terry Farrell when he described it, put the maps out and showed us the full extent of the area that we were talking about, which is in effect the size almost of a small town. And therefore I think the ambition that you're then looking for out of such a place is really, really huge. And I think in a sense it's incumbent on us to seize those opportunities and make sure that we are improving the area, and Ravi's talked about the importance of accessibility, realising the potential of the river, critically providing new homes that are needed, and finally, and I think most importantly for us as well, is the opportunity of jobs.
And Sean, you know, we heard there you're almost, it sounds like the sort of shop steward for the development community there. Was it difficult to sort of round up, you know, the different disparate stakeholders in terms of developers, and how have you found working with the local authorities?
Well, I guess dealing with the landowners first. I think obviously we've been working together now since 2009 as a group, 2009, 2010. So over the last 3 years, the challenges have changed quite a great deal from one of planning to now one of implementation, and the priorities have changed across that piece. I think one of the biggest challenges in terms of managing and representing the interests of the various landowners is that the landowners are all at different points on a journey. So some of us, the power station, CLS, St James are in a delivery programme. Others are much further back. So Royal Mail Group have secured their planning permission but don't have a development partner. And so trying to get the landowners that are not actually going to develop to contribute and be proactive is challenging, because they're not necessarily going to be the people that are going to carry the scheme forward.
Sure. Rob, what makes Battersea sort of stack up financially now, considering, you know, for 30 years it obviously didn't?
Well, I think when we first started with Battersea, I think there's 3 reasons why it never really happened before. One is that the planning, it never really had a proper viable planning consent. The last planning on the site was 4 million square feet. The scheme that we're implementing now is 8.1 million square feet. There was never anything happening around the power station. It was always a bit isolated on its own. And that's why we've been such a supporter of everything else that's happening in Nine Elms. And I think the third thing is that there was never decent public transport. So again, one of the things we've always been pushing is the Northern Line extension since the very start. And I think those 3 reasons, plus of course the deep pockets of our new Malaysian shareholders, have made it a reality.
And Richard, in terms of the site you guys at CLS have got in Vauxhall, tell us about how that's evolved, because I'm sure what you're doing with it now, you know, can you talk a little bit about that, is very different to what you envisaged there, you know, when you took over sort of 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, I think my chairman's probably been waiting longer than most because he bought our sites in Vauxhall over 20 years ago. And he tells the story that agents sort of looked at him and said, "Are you sure? It's south of the river. You need a passport to go there." So he's been waiting longer than most. But when I arrived just 3.5 years ago, at Vauxhall Square sites, nearly 4 acres, we had a complete clean sheet of paper. So 2.5 years later, to have a consent for 1.5 million square feet, 2 50-storey residential towers, is just a sign of sort of, I think, the can-do attitude that we've seen both from the development community but also from the local authority.